Hello, this is Mr. Ferreira, and I'm going to talk you through levels of measurement. It should be a really short video. We need to understand levels of measurement mostly because it's important for us to decide which test we might want to do in terms of inferential tests. They could ask a short question on types of data as well, and therefore having some kind of knowledge of it. We simplify down into kind of 4 different levels of measurement. There's technically kind of more, but we can kind of talk about that in the lesson in a different kind of day. So the first one is this thing called nominal data. Another way to talk about it is in terms of categories. It's kind of the simplest way to do something. All I can do with nominal data is literally just count it. You could find particular nominal categories. So you might have male or female. Now, I know that many of you might subscribe to this idea that obviously, just having this binary male female is kind of not quite, and gender is fluid. But you can appreciate that if there is only 2 boxes of M or F, you kind of have to tick one or the other. Okay, now we do also find that some particular forms now allow you to have a preferred not to say, or they are kind of non-binary categories that you can find, but they're still categories. Okay, so you find that you can't be in more than one category. So if I tick the box for M, I can't be in the F category, and that's kind of probably the best way to view nominal data. It's really simple, and ways in which I can perhaps find information out. I can't do much with it. So for example, I could ask you to raise your hand if you do English, and I could count how many of you do English A-level. And I could also then ask you to raise your hand and ask you who does biology. And then I can perhaps do a comparison between how many people do biology and how many people do English. But I can't necessarily even multiply the two because it won't make any sense. So it says, so these are my examples. Show of hands. You can just count. I mean, eye color is often a good one. I know you might argue that hazel often comes out as gray or green or blue and things like that. But the reality of it is, once again, you'll tick one of those boxes. And the reason we might want to do this is because of this idea of codes. Computers work with zeros and ones, and so therefore potentially I could work with zeros and ones. But it's kind of like the weakest way of doing things. And often it's just a frequency. As I said, that's a bit like a count. How many do we have? So these are examples here, male or female. What is your hair color? And we see we can even have something like this, other, as kind of allowing you to pretty much just put it into some kind of category there. So if we appreciate that there's not much we can do with that, we perhaps need to take it up into one more level. And the next level up from this, because it does say levels of measurement, is ordinal data. Now, in most of the inferential statistics, actually what we are concerned with is that it is at least ordinal. If I say at least ordinal, I'm saying it's not nominal. And I suppose it's because sometimes numbers aren't always clear to us, and so therefore it's quite important for us to kind of recognize that it's not a category. But please refer to the phrase at least ordinal in this particular case. Now, ordinal is exactly as it says, putting things in order. So it says I might be able to put A, B, and C in their order of attractiveness. But we can't actually tell the difference between C and A, and that's the problem. We might find that 2 of them are very attractive, but unfortunately, the third one is not. Now, of course, I would never recommend you do this. So it could be something along the lines. If I said, okay, so we're going to have a running race, a sprint race between Usain Bolt, Tyson Gay, and Mr. Ferreira, you can quite clearly perhaps figure out the order there. I'm assuming Usain Bolt will still come 1 and Tyson Gay will come 2nd. And I would come 3rd, and that would be awfully impressive. I could say I came 3rd, but of course you might not recognize that actually I was 10 times slower than Mr. Bolt. So it's things like that. So we can literally put something in an order or a rank, and that's it. House numbers, for example, are not meant to be mathematical. We can tell that house number 39 might appear to be after house number 37, and things like that. We can use a scale, some kind of Likert scale, in order to represent it. So we see things like this. How happy do you feel? How satisfied are you with our service? For example, our classic kind of ordinal data. So it's fairly useful, but of course we do want to do a bit more with this. And so the last level that we talk about, and so there's four, the fourth one being ratio, but we don't need ratio. We talk about being at least interval, in the same way as we did at least ordinal. And I suppose I want to simplify this in some ways, is if anything, we want to know nominal data and we want to know at least interval data, and everything else we don't really care about. Now, the reason it's called interval data is because when I measure something, for example, intervals are the same. So if I take a ruler and I measure between 10 and 11 centimeters, this is the same distance as it is between 15 and 16 centimeters, because that's kind of how a ruler works. They've worked out kind of a specific kind of, it's actually a ratio between the different numbers, and of course it's going to be consistent. So what I mostly talk about in terms of interval data is that they have to use some kind of measuring device. Because if they have, then it's going to be at least interval data, because I want a set of scales in the science lab to be measuring the same type of outcome as the set of scales in my bathroom, or the ruler that I use in class. I want it to be the same as the ruler you use in the exam. So typically speaking, we can often tell something is at least interval if they've used some kind of device to measure it. So anything to do with the scale is going to be there. So temperature, weighing scales, anything to do with time, often minutes, anything to do with kilograms, percentages, all of them. And we find that this is the most precise. And so, for example, going back to my wonderful race that I would have had with Usain Bolt, you can measure him at his 10 second 100 meters and my 100-second 100 meters. And you can say, well, he is 10 times quicker than me. And we can work those types of things out. Now, this is a long question, a long bit of reading for a very short answer. Okay, so quickly, it just says here, because I think what happens is sometimes we are very easily jumped to categories. So it says 20 students in class. I listened to the audio recording without distractions, and 20 listened with the recording. Okay, and they are kind of doodling. They're kind of given a particular time to do something. So, okay, so it says here, the data is at least ordinal. So why is the data at least ordinal? Okay, so let's look at the question. Each class was given a 2-minute audio recording of names of 25 fictional students. All students were given the same set of standardized instructions, telling them to listen carefully to the recording and to report whether the name Sam Smith was mentioned. Okay. After the recording had been played, the teacher explained to each class that the task had nothing to do with identifying Sam Smith. Instead, he instructed them to write down as many of the names as possible. Okay, so yes, we have categories here in terms of Group A and Group B, but by writing down the names, I'm going to have student 1 from Group A is going to have remembered 5 names. Student 2 from group A is going to remember 10 names. Student 3. So ultimately, I am collecting data that's not interval because I haven't used some kind of scale, some kind of device to do it. But it's also not nominal because I can say to somebody else, oh, look at participant number 4 from group B. They remembered 20 names. And that is the biggest amount of names remembered out of both groups. And so I've already kind of put in some kind of structure or order there. So usually when we're looking at types of data, we're not just looking at one small aspect of it. We're looking at kind of the outcome of what we're doing. So yes, there are independent groups, and of course independent groups are effectively categories. However, the level of data is going to be at least ordinal. Okay, at least ordinal. So I hope you have found this interesting. I know people really struggle with levels of measurement. However, please simplify it down to, as I said, it's either nominal or it's not. And so therefore, if it is nominal, we do something specific with it. If it's not nominal, we need to find out whether it's at least ordinal or at least interval. And that's also easy to spot. If they've used a device, it's at least interval. Therefore, if it's not nominal and not interval, then it has to be at least ordinal. And that should hopefully simplify everything for you. Thank you for listening, and I will continue this series of videos another time.